Hi and welcome back to Bike Speeds. This week we're going to service this lovely steel framed Ribble road bike. Really was a joy to do this one. Not only are we going to service it, we're going to replace the chain. We're actually putting smaller chain rings onto this one at the same time. And we found a major fault with the stem on this one. So do stick around to the end of this video because it's quite a common occurrence and yet this was quite a bad one. So you do want to keep watching to the end. The chain was at 0.5% stretch. That's the recommended time to change an 11-speed chain. You can sometimes drop that to 0.75, but this customer had travelled quite a distance to us to get this bike done. So we messaged him and said we really felt you needed a new chain, and he agreed to have that done at the same time. Initially, I'm taking all the components off the bike that I'm going to service in this service. So off come the wheels, remove the cassette off of the wheels so that I can check the hub and make sure everything's okay there. And also do the necessary torque settings to make sure everything's tight and right. You can see there the cassette has got quite a lot of oil on it. That will gradually pick up dust and debris off the road, which will congeal and make that a very thick and grimy oil by the time it would be cleaned off. So that's a very, very good time to get a bike service when you've got an oil build-up. You can see here on the rear derailleur, we've got that oily sheen to it. You can see a little bit of build up on the arm there between the jockey wheels and on the jockey wheels themselves. Again, a great aspect of a service is to get that cleaned off, re-lubricated so that it's as fresh as the day it came out the box and can continue its life journey on the bike. Same with the front derailleur. You can see there's that debris, that dust building up on the top there where it's been oiled. That's why we need to service a bike, to stop that grimy paste effectively acting like sandpaper on your components and wearing them out much quicker. Be that your chain rings, your cassette, your chain, any of those components really don't deal very well with a dusty debris on them in the oil. So that's why we service these components. I'm taking out the chain set away from the bottom bracket because we are putting smaller rings onto this bike. But again, on those rings you can see that sheen from the oil and the debris on there that's come off of the chain, stuck to the chain rings. This was a very timely service on this bike. We're going to remove the pivots and the brake pads themselves from the calipers. That enables me to wash those down, clean everything up, make sure everything is okay with the calipers themselves, and also to clean up the braking surface on the brake pads at the same time. And now I'm just taking the rear derailleur apart so that I can clean the housing of the jockey wheels themselves and then also the jockey wheels and re-lubricate everything as I put it back together so that it is as it would have been put on the bike originally. Off come those old chain rings. They're going to be given back to the customer. We're going to fit slightly smaller ones onto there so we don't need to clean those, thankfully, and we can pop the parts that we are cleaning into the ultrasonic cleaner and set that going, and that will really work its magic and draw out all the dirt and oils away from these components. You can see there that was a fresh solution and how that's pulling out that debris away from the components with the ultrasonic wave that goes through them. Great technique for cleaning these parts. Joy of that is it can get really deep where even with this brush you cannot quite get to really clean these parts up to an as new condition. So once they've been through the ultrasonic cleaner, you can see there I'm washing them down. A little bit of warm soapy water. I'll then clean those off with a microfiber towel, blow them out with an airline to really dry them off really nicely before I begin the lubrication process to getting those back on the bike. So the spider of the chain set there, we've also just washing that down. That hasn't been through the ultrasonic cleaner, it just needed a wash down. The cassette there, you can see how beautiful that's come up through the ultrasonic cleaner, so that's nice to present that also back to the customer with a nice clean cassette. But also from the servicing aspect, it stops your chain wearing so much if there's not that grime and debris on the cassette. Next up, we're going to start the lubricating process. So there I'm using our Bike Speeds premium grease in one of our syringes. It's a nice easy way of applying this grease. You can be controlled with the way you put that grease onto the component. So I just put a little bit on the edge there, put the plate on, a little bit where the center roller there will go within that jockey wheel before I put it back on the bike. And now I'm using some thread locker on the derailleur itself to lock those parts in to make sure they don't come undone on the bike and cause an issue. The greases that we use, the thread locker that we use, cables that you'll see in other videos, detailing stickers that you'll also see in other videos, are all available on our website. So we do all 5 syringes here on our website. The Bike Speeds premium grease there, the general purpose oil here, which has its nice little applicator pin on the end that really enables us to distribute that oil nicely and smoothly. We've got the anti-seize copper grease there, which we use on most threads, and then the general purpose grease there. All of these are available on our website, along with the silicone grease on the end there, which we use on rubbers and brake pivot points, which you'll see in other videos. So they're available on our website as a 5-pack. You can also get those as refills or individually as well on our website. So please do check that out. It's our main way of supporting our channel ourselves, and also for you to support us as a channel. So please do check out our website. We'll put the link in the description below. That's actually in all the videos, so if ever you're looking for us, check that out in the description, and then you'll find our website. Again, we've got general purpose oil there on the center shaft of the through axle, and a little bit of our anti-seize grease on the threads of the through axle. And I'm also popping a little bit there on the bolts that hold the chain rings on. And then I'm using our general purpose grease on the flanges that the chain rings sit on. I find this enables me to remove them easier for the next service. You don't get the corrosion between the 2 layers. It just puts a film on there that enables me, when I'm taking these off next time, to be able to lift them off, service them. It's a little bit of future proofing to my servicing technique and the way that I deal with a bike long term. So these bikes often come back to me more than once, many times in their journey, and this enables me to service them slightly easier next time. Now I'm going to clean up the brake pads themselves. I'm just using a brass bristle brush there, nice soft brass bristle brush, to clean that off, and you can see what a difference that makes. The one on the left has been cleaned, the one on the right has that dusty film and residue on it. You can see the braking surface of the pad itself is a little bit rough. It makes a massive difference just to clean those pads down. It can help with all manner of things with your braking. Next up, we're going to wash down the frame. You can see here I'm using our lovely big softy nylon bristle brush. It's a nice densely populated brush with plenty of soft nylon bristles. It's the way of working that dirt and debris off the bike. It's a very soft brush, so it doesn't scratch. Enables us to work the dirt off of the bike. Again, check out our website, because we do our cleaning products on there as well. So often the brushes and things that we use, you'll see on the website. Now I'm using a microfiber towel. The lovely thing about a microfiber towel is that it's very soft. It will not scratch the paint, but it really holds a lot of weight in water for its own volume. So they're a great way of drying off a bike. Next up, I'm going to wash the wheel down. Now, I've talked about this in other videos about the tactile feel and finding the integrity of the wheel. But one thing I did notice with this wheel was that the logo right at the top there by the valve was set nicely over the valve. I think this customer must have watched 1 or 2 of our videos, because those tyres were rotating the correct way. The logos were over the valve, a nicely presented tyre on the wheel. So he certainly gets a tick on the form for that one. He's set his wheels and tyres up very nicely. Now I'm just sanding the disc rotor on the disc itself. That will take the score marks off, which cause some of the squealing on there, so we make sure that that's nice. And I'm just adding our general purpose grease to the hub itself before I pop that nicely cleaned 11-speed cassette back onto there. So we pop each of those ones back on there. Then I'll put the lock ring on, which you can see now. And then once that's on, I will torque that up to the correct torque ratchet setting for that component. I also check the torque setting for the disc itself. Next up, we put in the chain set. Again, as I mentioned, there's slightly smaller rings than were on there, so we'll pop that on. We get everything here correct, so I'm putting on the left hand pedal arm there. Now I will torque those up as I'm setting everything up here. I like to have that central positioning of everything correct, so I tend to torque that up along the way rather than at the end, as you see in our videos where we go through the bike with a torque wrench. Now I'm just putting a little bit of anti-seize grease on the pedals. Trust me, when pedals corrode into those arms, they are a nightmare to get out, so popping any form of grease on there will help in the future. There's this little pad here. You get that with a lot of the front derailleurs. That's to protect the paint on the frame. Because we're putting smaller rings on, we need to lower that on the frame. So that's glued on with a double-sided sticky pad. So I just remove that protector off of the frame, lift off that sticky pad, and then I'll replace that with our own little double-sided sticky pad. I use a slightly larger one just to give me a little bit more volume in the stickiness of that, because they can work loose, those at times. So that's on the frame. On goes the front derailleur itself. Now these have this little set point here, this little screw that will square them up against the front chain rings and support it against that panel that I've put onto the frame. Now obviously, because we've lowered this on the frame, the actual cable there is now slightly too long because it's obviously lower. So I'm going to torque that up, torque up the mount as well to make sure that's all set in its final position. Pop the little cap on the top, and then I'm just going to pull that and nip that off before I put a new tail on the end of there, and that will also stop that coming back through that little plastic cap that goes on the top of that front derailleur. Next up, I pop on the rear derailleur. We're reusing the cable on this one. This bike actually hadn't done an awful lot of wear, so the cables and everything else on the bike were absolutely fine to reuse. This was initially a very routine service, so there was no harm in reusing the cables. Now it's very important with this pivot point that goes through the brake pads to lubricate it, especially the threads. They're notorious on these Shimano brake calipers for that thread seize in the caliper. So we use our anti-seize copper grease on there, wind that in, and then I know that next time when I come to service this bike, that will come back out without any problems and won't have seized into the caliper. It's amazing. I can do these months down the line, if not years down the line, where I've removed this pivot point and I can always tell when I've serviced it because I have a little residue of the copper grease still on there and they undo so nicely. So that's a really important one to do. Now we're popping the wheels on. So in go those through axles, which we've lubricated as you saw. So they're now going in nicely. Now we can put on a brand new chain. And at this point, we believed we were really cracking on with this video. We were quite happy with the way things were going. We knew we had a few checks and a few torque wrench settings to do, and then we found this major problem that you're about to see. So if you're enjoying this video, please do like it. Please do subscribe if you're not subscribed. If you're new to the channel and you just found this video, please do subscribe, help us out, and we'll bring you more videos. So we'll check the gearing and everything's working there. We're checking the brakes are working and that they're releasing freely and not touching the disc. We may have done some adjustments along the way with that. And now we're going to work our way through the bike. So we always start front to back, hoods first. So we're doing our routine of making sure that the brake hoods are torqued correctly, and you can see there they're loose, so we tighten those up. Now I noticed here that the logo there, the level logo, the V on the stem wasn't lined up, so I went to undo this stem, and then I realized that we had a major problem with this bike that I hadn't noticed before, and it's right here. This has been over tightened and it's fractured the aluminium of the cover on the front of that stem. It's actually fractured through, it's broken. The other side was also bent, so this was quite dangerous because that was failed one side, close to failure the other side. It would have only been a matter of time where a little bit of weight on the hoods of those, that would have snapped. The hoods would have dropped down. It could have caused a major accident, this. I've seen this before. It's where the bike is delivered with the handlebars off in a box. The rider puts the handlebars on, and in this instance, the bottom two bolts were tightened so that they were almost touching the stem itself. You can see here the rocking, you can see that bend on the right hand side where it's fractured. Quite dangerous. That's the new one there. You can see how level and flat that is in comparison with the old one. All four of these were actually bent slightly. It was quite bent over. So the rider's put these on, he's tightened up the bottom ones, then he's tightened up the top ones. He hasn't done that level, so as the gap top and bottom was different. That had enabled him to then tighten up that top one, which he'd over tightened, and because it was not square and everything was a little bit skew whiff, it had broken. So that probably happened from new, but that was a failure, a catastrophic failure waiting to happen, but certainly a failure in that crown that was failed. So I'm going to do these up in a crisscross pattern. So I'll do, as I'm talking them up, I'll do the top bolt, then I'll do a bottom right hand bolt, top right hand, bottom left, and I worked my way through those until they reached the torque setting, so that the gap on that crown, top and bottom, is the same, and that bike is now safe on that stem. So I continue now my journey through torquing this up. This was actually a 2-day delay for us, and we thought we were home and dry, and we often joke that the service isn't over until the last bolt is turned, and that stem really proved that point. So I'm working my way through now, front to back. The saddle there was okay, the saddle post, we also do all the brake calipers, the through axles, the derailleurs, everything is checked through at the correct specification. And once we are happy that every nut and bolt is tight and right, we can now present the bike to the customer. So as you can see here, it's a subtle but massive difference. The bike now has the different gearing on it, the new chain, everything cleaned, lubricated, that very dangerous stem sorted out, and this bike is now ready to go. So I hope you've enjoyed this video. I look forward to seeing you again very, very soon. Bye for now.